Hello, I'm David Rice. I'm a partner in our business advisory services group at Recipient Company. Over the past several weeks, we have fielded dozens of calls from our clients wanting to understand more about the CARES Act and other stimulus items, and we have been doing our best to keep our clients and colleagues updated on the constant flow of information coming out of Washington. We thought we'd take the time today to make a short video and really discuss some of the more recent updates that have hit the market. Specifically, I want to talk to 5 different items that caught my attention over the last couple of weeks. Number one, after much anticipation, the SBA and Treasury released the forgiveness application and the forms necessary to file for forgiveness of a PPP loan on their websites. This was published last Friday, May the 15th. Fair warning, it's a rather lengthy form. It's 11 pages filled with a lot of calculations and schedules. And it does lay out a step-by-step process for what the forgiveness application looks like. While the form itself addressed several items or questions, particularly around the covered period and when that should start, is it the first day of the loan receipts, or is it the first pay period afterwards? There is language in there that allows for the alternative covered period, so you should be aware of that as you go to look forward in that. A couple things still are outstanding on it. Number one, is there going to be an extension of the 8 weeks to utilize the funds? This has been discussed in multiple news outlets that there's conversations on the Hill around moving the 8 weeks to 12 weeks, and we don't know if that's going to happen or not at this point. So as of today, it's still the 8-week covered period as described in the Act as well as in the forgiveness form. The second item is really around the de minimis nature of that form. Is that going to be something that every single PPP borrower will have to submit the 11-page document to apply for forgiveness? Specifically, borrowers under the $25,000 or $30,000 loans, are they going to be required to submit that? Again, this has been discussed, or we've seen a couple of news outlets on this, but nothing definitive has been made on it. And you should plan on filling out the paperwork for any loan under the forgiveness package. The biggest question still outstanding on the PPP forgiveness is around the audit, the implied audit of loans over $2 million. While the form doesn't specifically request additional documentation or additional calculations for those particular loans, it does have a clause, a certification at the bottom of it that you must sign to say that you will provide additional information as requested by the SBA to process your forgiveness. My assumption is this is where the forgiveness component is going to be deeper looked at on the loans over $2 million. The SBA has also said they're going to be sending out additional guidance. They'll continue to update the FAQs for this matter as we move forward. Number 2, also related to the PPP loans, is the good faith safe harbors. This was originally published as an item maybe 2 weeks ago when Secretary Mnuchin came out with the statement around borrowers that had access to other liquidity markets were not intended to receive the PPP loans, specifically publicly traded companies. That established a safe harbor date of May the 7th for those companies to return the funds. Safe harbor's been moved to the 14th, and then it was moved again to the 18th, which was actually yesterday. But one thing that people should take a look at in all the language in the FAQs is particularly around question number 46. That does provide some level of comfort that if you received a PPP loan and the SBA determines that you were not eligible to receive that loan, that there won't be any criminal penalties associated with it. That's at least what's implied in the FAQ, that you would subsequently just have to repay the monies back to the SBA. Third item, in case you missed it, the IRS issued a statement 2020-32 a couple of weeks back that while it recognized that the loan forgiveness component of a PPP loan is non-taxable as a gross income item, it did point out that further IRS code does exclude any expenses that a forgiveness of a loan was used to pay those expenses. Those expenses are no longer deductible, specifically payroll in this situation. So if you took a PPP loan, made the payroll with it, that payroll is no longer a deductible expense for 2020 IRS purposes. There have been several items brought up in the House and the Senate to change this, and I believe this will take an act by Congress to make that a change to the IRS code, as the IRS has already published their stance on it, and Secretary Mnuchin and the Treasury have responded that they agree with it. One of the provisions that's included in the CARES Act that hasn't been getting as much publicity is under Section 1112, which was regarding to certain some subsidy for certain other loan payments. Essentially, this section in the Act provides that the SBA will make your payments for you on pre-existing SBA loans. So if you had a 7A or a 504 or a microloan, you have a 6-month period where the SBA is going to make your principal, interest, and any fees that are due on that loan. So that's just something that hasn't caught a lot of attention in the press, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of. And then the last item I'd like to talk about is one specifically related to independent mortgage banks. And this is about the 14-day rule. A lot of lenders, SBA lenders, looked at the rules for independent mortgage banks and decided that they were not eligible to receive a PPP loan based on this rule. The rule really states that any loans you make, you must sell and move into the secondary market within 14 days of origination. The real question around that now is that a literal 14-day hard bright line test, or is it more of a spirit and an intent of your businesses to dispose of those loans? And honestly, we don't know which way this is going to play out with the SBA. Are they going to take a hardline stance on it and say that every loan has to be out within 14 days, and if you didn't, then you weren't eligible for the PPP loan? Or is it more the spirit and the intent that you move the vast majority of your loans under 14 days, but may have a couple of stragglers that take longer? To be honest, we don't know how this is going to play out. Hopefully, the Congress, the Treasury, and the SBA will come forward with some explicit guidance around this. But our advice to clients has been to at least do some digging and some understanding of what your actual timing is on that, and be able to defend that if you're questioned on it.